The first building was built out here in 1834, and the money was allocated in 1833. This wall actually was a wood wall, like a stockade wall, and the prison buildings were up on that end. We're going to go in the prison, and the oldest building we're going to go in there was built in 1868. Sometimes it's hard for me to say 18 because I'm just thinking 19 all the time, but 1868 it was built, and we'll go in that building and show you some things in there. But there are a lot of old buildings, but that's the oldest one we'll go into. The walls here, all this limestone was mined or quarried from right here in Jeff City, from the different quarries in Jeff City. And it was done by prison labor, and most of it was laid up by prison labor. A lot of people ask about these round holes in these stones, and they get the idea that these are gunshot blasts, shotgun blasts. Well, they're not. They were mined, and they were quarried, and there were big, like ice tongs that would fit on this side and on the back side and fit in those holes, and they picked them up with block and tackles, manually with block and tackles. But you're going to see a lot of the limestone buildings in here. Now, there are some brick buildings that date back into the 30s, back during the PWA and WPA. And we're going to take you in and let you go into some cells, let you walk around a little bit, and some of the interesting people that were in here, Sonny Liston, James Earl Ray, Pretty Boy Floyd, some of those kind of guys. What they call a round gate. It was a steel gate where an officer would be, and you'd give him your identification and he'd let you in. The stories above here were the warden's office, the assistant warden's office, administration, finance and all that. Locksmith, armory was all up there. Visiting rooms were right here. They would bring the inmate from the other way, which I'll show you, and you would meet in there and you could visit in there. They had their cubicles in there to visit. This building, like I said, 3 stories. You only see 2 here. There was a basement to it, and if you were an inmate being processed in here, you'd come in the main gate down there. They would take you down into the bottom, and then you would go in and be processed, fingerprinted, and checked out and everything, and then they'd bring you up here, take you in that door where the cement blocks was, into the control room, and then you'd go to your cell from there. So there was a lot of stuff here that was taken down that you can't see now. There's actually four levels of cells, and you'll see there's a walk. You know, prisons had the walks where the guards were. They call those walks. They're like a terrace in front of the cell. So that is one whole room up there, and there's 4 cell blocks going high up there. There's Maddie Howard tells a story about, in her book, she tells about having her tonsils removed in here on a kitchen table by another inmate that wasn't a doctor, and she liked to bled to death. There's what they call a blind cell up there, blind cell. And the reason they call it a blind cell is there's no light, and if you didn't play well with others, you got put in that. So the ladies had a blind cell up here. Eventually, the prison reform came in, and they moved the ladies from here over to Minor Hill, where the DNR building is now. That was called Minor Hill. And the Minor Mansion, the old Minor Mansion, was over there, which we'll see a little bit later where it was. The guy up there that looks like Lenin, that is actually A.M. Dockery. He was a governor at the time this was built. This building was built in 1904, and it was built facing the Capitol down there. Well, the Capitol that you see now is not the one that was there when this was built. The old Capitol burnt in 1911, lightning strike, and the interesting story is they brought people from this prison to fight the fire and to help get the documents out of the old Capitol. And there were 5 guys, I believe it was, that got pardoned because they did such a good job in getting them out of here. So the old Capitol was here. This was, look at the old Capitol. And Dockery was the governor at the time. Eckel and Mann was the architects on this, and Eckel and Mann may not mean anything to you, so they actually built the City Hall in St. Louis. All kinds of animals in here. Oh yeah, cats just you'll know what it feels like. That means you are here, you are ours. There were 2 types of prison. There was one called the Pennsylvania type prison. It was started by the Quakers, and the Quakers believed in the punishment of the mind. They didn't believe in punishing the body. What they would do is give you a Bible and put you in a cell and let you contemplate what you did and pray that you would get forgiveness. Now the Auburn system, was the other way. That was the one where they believed in the cat o' nine tails. They could hang you on the walls in chains, and they had a water torture. In Mark's book, it shows a picture of a guy lashed down in a chair with a funnel over his head, and they snap a box around his head, and they would drop water in up to your nose. And you would sit there in that chair with your arms strapped down, water up to your nose, and you know, if you had to sneeze or something, and natural reflexes, open your mouth, water comes in. So they talk about waterboarding. They did the water torture here. And Missouri was one of, most prisons had the Auburn type of prison system. Very, very brutal. And this building is called A Hall. And A Hall, Building 4, is the oldest building on the property. That is 1868, folks. 1868 that was built. There was Civil War prisoners in there, both north and south. You know, Missouri was kind of on the borderline. They had Union and Confederate soldiers in there. In 1925, the roof burned off of that building. There were 2 stoves in that building, one on each end. They were like a big 55-gallon barrel with this flue going out, and they got a defective flue. It burnt the roof off. In January, they moved 650 inmates out of that building. Now, do some math. There's 147 cells in that building. 650 inmates were moved out into this yard in January. No roof on that building, and they spent their nights out here under blankets and whatever they could do, rain, sleet, snow, and in a week's time, they put a new roof on that building. 33 is where Sonny Liston was. You're more than welcome to walk into these cells and look at them. And if you want, take a few minutes and go up these stairways on the end. There or here, and you can go up and walk up on the walks up there if you want. Everything's safe up there if you don't climb up on the rails. You can walk across the crosswalks there and see what it feels like to be a prisoner in here. Yeah, this is a lot cleaner than it was. It was terrible in here.
I was telling Susie, my wife and I toured this with the Jefferson City Police Department CPA class like in 02, maybe 01 or 02. And we walked in, of course, it was full of people, and there was one female guard.
Mm-hmm. I believe that's probably the
Pam.
one that does Pam. She's an assistant to her.
I was just like, oh.
He robbed an A&P store in St. Louis. They said he wasn't a bad guy, and actually when he came in here, he wasn't a fighter. And they found out that he had the natural part of a fighter. And the warden here at the time, Mark remembers the guy's name, the warden here got him started. Now remember, this wasn't they didn't have showers in here. When you took a shower or a bath, if you did, you took them out in that yard in an old tub. If you were the first one in the tub, you had the clean water. If you were the 7th one, well, you know, you didn't have clean water. But anyway, originally there was a wooden gate or wooden door and steps, stone stairs going down into the dungeon. In the 70s, I believe it was, the 70s, they put the showers in down here, and there's 6 shower heads for 600 and some people in here. So you can imagine how often you could take a shower. When we go down there, the dungeon cells are nasty, and there were as many as 8 people in those dungeon cells at times. The original cells, the original cell door, when you go in, you'll see it right there behind that plastered up part, and there were steel bars, and at the bottom you'll see there's a hole where they would shove the bread and water into you in there. And there might be 8 people in these cells, folks. And you go in and put 8 people in there and think what it would be like. And like I say, there's Civil War prisoners, both Union and Confederate. And you get in there, and it's black, and you might have a Confederate soldier with Union soldiers, and somebody's going to get killed. Okay, if that happens, they lay in there, and if the guard comes down, he decides he wants to pull the body out, fine. If he don't, fine. Interesting story about these cells. There was a gentleman by the name of Firebug Johnson. His name was Johnson, and he got the name Firebug. He wrote a book. There we go. He wrote a book. And anyway, it's called Buried Alive in the Missouri State Penitentiary, 17 years. He came in here in 1883, and he went out of here. They said he was insane when he went out in 1900. But he spent 10 years of that 17 years in these cells because he would not stop burning buildings down. He would get out, he'd set a fire. That's where he got the name Firebug Johnson. The other guy was named McKay. And McKay was in here for many, many years, and he would not work for the state of Missouri for $1 a day. That was why he got put in. He'd bring him out. He wouldn't work for him, so they put him back in. And he was in here for many, many years, and he died, and they said he was insane when he went out of here. And he was buried out here in Longview Cemetery. I don't know if you know where that's at. But his monument is still out there, and I went out the other day to look at it, and it's in the prisoner part of the cemetery out there, but it says, Buck McKay will not work for the state of Missouri for $1 a day, all the way with Buck McKay. Take a deep breath. Well, the question always comes up, what if you didn't take a deep breath? Well, they said it was about 2.5 minutes if you fought it. It'd take an hour to empty the gas out of that cell, and they would actually take the guard out of that tower there when they did an execution and bring him out, take him off the tower because they were afraid that the wind would change and that would gas him. Now, executions were done here. They were done up until 1938 by hanging. And the most famous one, I think, in Jeff City was there were 4 guys that escaped from this prison. They killed 2 guards and they wounded the warden so bad that he died about a year later. But is that light on in there, Mike? Or Steve?
Yeah, it is.
Okay, good. Mike does that. He's good at that. There's a red lever out there that they would lift, and it would drop those pellets down into that bucket underneath there. And this is an example of one right there. You can see a little lid. I tried to pick it up one day. Come on in. You come in here. It's not that scary.
I want to pick.
Well, I'll get out of here so you don't have to worry about me. Painter, and the state would let us and repaint that because it's getting nasty now.
Who painted it?
I don't know who did it. I don't know who did it, but it was done. Oh yeah, it was done on purpose. But that's where he had his fight down.